Hello everyone, my name is Henrique and this is the first video of this series, how to build decentralized applications using Golang with Cartesi. In this first video, I would like to introduce you the tool that will follow us during this entire journey here and develop a simple application to show how radically simple it is to build with Cartesi. So, let's go. So first things first, I really advise you go to docs.cartesi.io and then under the development section, see the installation process of the Cartesi CLI, which is a tool that is an abstraction that helps us to manage the life cycle of our Cartesi dApp. Yes, there's a couple requirements here, the Docker desktop, Node.js, NPM, and also for Windows users, a recommendation to use WSL plus Ubuntu latest stable release. After this installation process, you can go here and choose the approach to install the Cartesi CLI in your system, and then after this you must be able to run Cartesi doctor and see an output like this. The next step here is create our project. So to do it, let me go to this path and then I'm gonna use the CLI Cartesi create and then --template, choose the Go as our template here, and the name of our application will be toUpper. Now once we have the project created, I can open this with the VS Code. Then, as you can see, we have this scaffold project created by the CLI, and inside of the ECRC folder we have some files here, and this folder, this rollups folder that has this helper.go with a lot of auxiliary functions to help us to send outputs and encode and decode things. Also, there's this model.go file that has a lot of data structures used in our application here, and this dApp.go, which is our main file that has our main function here, and others 3 functions. Let me do an overview about each one. This handler function here is actually a strategy pattern, so for different types of inputs it will call the handle advance for advanced state input, and then handle inspect for inspect state input. So talking more about the handle advance function here, this will be called when you are trying to change the state of our application. And then we have this handle inspect that will be called when you are trying to read the state, and only read inspect the state of our application. There's no difference than a standard Web 2 backend development here, since we also have a way to write into the internal state and even in a database inside of our application and read the internal state like we do in backend development using SQL. So our goal here is develop a simple application that for each input received, it will transform the content of the input in uppercase. So to do it, I will start define our global state here. In this case, I'm going to use an in-memory approach, defining a new variable here. Latest, it will be a string type. And then I will start changing the handle advance logic, the write logic of our application. Before we start to change this logic, it's important to note that each input received here is actually a hex input. So we need to decode this to see the real value if we send, for example, a string as an input. That's the case, so let me define a decoded payload, and then if there's an error, if it will return. Let me use the hex to decode the hex input that came from the data.payload. This payload is part of the advanced response. But first we need remove the 0x at the beginning of this to the code. And then if there's an error, we will throw this error and return this as a fmt error. Yeah, if it's different then. So now we have the decoded payload here, and now we need to define as a global state this value but in uppercase. To do it, let me just use the strings and then to upper. Since we have this as a byte, we need to transform this also in a string, decoded payload. Then I'm gonna log this to see the result of this change. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we finished our handle advance. And now to test this, we need to start locally the rollups framework infrastructure. So this is very simple to do with the Cartesi CLI. You just need to run Cartesi rollups start. Yes, let me see if everything goes well with the status command. Yes, we have the Cartesi rollups running, but no applications deployed yet. To deploy our application, we need first run Cartesi build. It will generate values that will be deployed in the node running locally right here. So as you can see, there's a new folder here called .cartesi with a bunch of files. I will explain more about it later, but for now we just need run Cartesi deploy. I will choose the default options here, but you can choose whatever you want. Then, if I run Cartesi rollups logs, we must be able to see that a new application was deployed and registered. So now we could test our logic sending an input, right? Let me send this input right here. Cartesi is awesome. So since we are sending a string as input, I'm using the input encoding as a string. Again, default options. Then we must be able to see in the logs again. Yes, we have this. As you can see, there's a log saying that the latest value of the global state is the input sent it before, but in uppercase. So now we need implement our handle inspect. But first, let me introduce something. Our application here can generate three types of outputs: reports, notes, and vouchers. For this simple application here, I will focus more in reports because this is the case when we are talking about inspect states. But in the next videos, I will talk more about the notes and vouchers. But there's one important thing here to know. Handle inspects and inspect states calls can only generate reports as outputs. So to do it, I'm gonna use this function right here, this auxiliary function right here, which actually calls this send post. That is a simple post request to this internal server that are run inside of this sandbox environment that we call Cartesi machine. Again, I will explain more about it later, but for now, we just need to call this inside of our handle inspect function right here. So let me just call this send report and then define that we are trying to send this payload. As value of this key called payload, we need to send a hex input. In this case, the idea is send the value of the global state. It means the value of the latest variable right here. So we also need this auxiliary function to transform string to hex, since this variable has the string type. And then I think it will work. To test it, we need Cartesi build again. One important thing to know is every time that you change your logic or your code, you need build and deploy your application again to test. So now that we have the files, let me run Cartesi rollups and then the deploy command. I'm gonna choose again the default options. Then we must be able to see in the logs that we have a new application deployed and registered. Then to test if the logic of the handle inspect is working, I'm gonna send again an input. This time will be Ethereum is awesome. Again, default options. Yes. If we run Cartesi logs, we must be able to see the same log right here that are used in the handle advance to write the new input. Then to test if the read call is working, I'm gonna get this address right here because we registered our application name as the contract address. So to read the state of our application, we just need to perform a post request to this endpoint right here, passing as value the application name, in our case the contract address of the application contract. And then yes, we have this as output, as you can see. This is a hex output because we send this as a hex, right? To decode this, I'm gonna use the cast binary, which is part of the Foundry blockchain development toolkit. And then, as you can see, we have Ethereum is awesome because we send Ethereum is awesome, but in lowercase. And as you can see, this is now in uppercase. Let me just do an overview about what I did. I changed the logic of the handle advance to write the input content, transform it in uppercase into this global state. And then inside of this handle inspect here, I just send the global state as output when we are trying to read the internal state of our application. That's it, guys. As you can see, the Cartesi Rollups framework is designed to allow us as a developers don't mind with Cartesi specific details or the framework specific details. We just did a simple application with, Golang, just Golang. But in the next video, we'll dive into the architecture behind it to understand more about the details and how could we produce different kinds of outputs and more. I see you in the next video.